Welcome. Welcome. Hello. Come on in. Come on in the room. You have a seat at the table on this afternoon. Listen, my name is Dr. D. Bryant. I will be your host on this evening for the open mic night, Poetic Justice. Yes. Now, listen, there are several conversations and discussions that are happening all over the world, from COVID-19, job loss, uh, bereavements, racial injustices, into the upcoming presidential election. Yes, but listen, there's another critical conversation that will happen around this table on this afternoon. I invite you to pull up a seat. And so this conversation is near and dear to me and several others who are on and who are listening. And this is the mass incarceration of Black men in America. And so I want to invite you to listen with an open heart, with your ears, and share this so that we can spread this conversation, this message to many who can support and help us bring an end to this mass incarceration issue. Now, listen, on tonight, we have fabulous guests who are going to join us, from speakers to those who are going to poetry. It's going to be amazing. And as a matter of fact, I have someone who is going to start with us on this evening, who's going to kick it off with a poetry reading. And that is Byron Poindexter Sr. He's the most essential title. His most essential title is Man of God. And being a man of God causes him to be even more effective and efficient husband, father, author, minister in training, and CEO. Mr. Poindexter is the CEO and co-founder of Be On Point Photography, LLC, in My Kingdom Priority clothing brand. A scripture Byron stands on as a millennial and entrepreneur is Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. Listen, I want you to give a warm welcome to Mr. Byron Poindexter Sr.
Hey. Thank you so much, Dewan, for that
Yes.
awesome introduction. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're so very welcome. And thank you so much for being a part of this very important conversation, this cause here around the table. So we are going to release you to do what you do and allow God to use you for a time such as this.
All right. Well, I also want to thank Miss Erna for inviting me to this platform. I truly do appreciate it. I'd like to thank and acknowledge my beautiful wife, Jaquana Poindexter. I love you, honey. And I also like to thank God for his blessings and benefits. Again, my name is Byron Poindexter. I'm the CEO of Be On Point Photography and my Kingdom Priority Clothing Company. And I also am the author of My Poetic Experience, which I'll be reading a couple poems from that book for you tonight. All right. And the first one I'm going to be reading is called Blackout. My black is beautiful. My black rocks. My black got me kneed down on the ground and murdered by the cops. My black caused prejudice, and my black caused hate. My black caused me to be underprivileged to the point they can't relate. They'll never relate to the pain of me and my black peers. Black history overflowing with sadness, blood, sweat, and tears. 400 years, slave. How much longer do we have to fight and stand up against our oppressors? As long as they treat us unequal, as if we are the lesser. The police killed Breonna Taylor and didn't even want to address her. Another mother weeping over her child. God bless her. Say her name without trying to prove your innocence. She was innocent. They raided her home and never found any evidence. I cannot breathe. That's what George Floyd said when he was face down on the ground. I can't breathe. The officer's knee on his neck, ignoring the sound. I can't breathe. From the pollution of racism and police violence in America against blacks, no longer will we watch police put their foot on our brother's back. Get off of him. He said he can't breathe. So there's no need for us to converse. All lives can't matter until black lives matter first. All right, and that's my first one. Again, that was called Blackout. And I'm going to read another one for you, and it's called Mind of a Hustler. And I'll give you a little background on this. This is basically the mindset of a black man growing up impoverished and not thinking that he can ever become more than what he is and what he's experiencing right now. Mind of a hustler. There's some things I can't explain, and there's some things I can't maintain. What's the use of putting work towards things I'll never obtain? Merely by the texture of my skin lets me know I'll have to fight. And if two jobs are hiring, they'll both hire in the white. I never want to feel defeated, but sometimes I really do. The workers are many in my society. It's the jobs that are few. It's hard out here for a black man. Even worse, you can't trust your own color. Every time we're in the streets together, we just want to kill each other. What are we really fighting about? We're all fighting to stay alive. And if I wake up, I'm a hustle. That's the only way I'll survive. And that was my second poem. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for the time. I hope you all enjoyed. You can follow me on Facebook at Byron Poindexter, at Instagram at SetFree2014, and my_Kingdom Priority. Check out my clothing line on my website, mykingdompriority.square.site. And I do have a couple of events coming up that I'm going to be featured in. One is the pre-Thanksgiving underground pop-up event held by Doug Coleman and D Mills on November the 21st from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the SVRC Marketplace in Saginaw, Michigan. Also, my clothing will be featured in Beauty and Me's virtual fashion show on December 5th. So please stay on the lookout for those two. Again, thank you again and be blessed.
Awesome. Listen, you have kicked us off correctly. Oh. And I enjoyed the Blackout and the Mind of a Hustler.
Wow.
Just absolutely amazing. I love the way you painted the picture of just what's happening around us today and to bring awareness. You know, you have such a gift and it's amazing. I appreciate it. And November 5th, everyone, I just want to reiterate that. Yeah. November 5th, the Beauty and Me, that they'll be featuring his clothing line. So we want to make sure
December 5th.
Oh, December 5th. Oh, okay.
Beauty and Me. I'm being a fashion show. Beauty and Me, and it's on December the 5th. It's gonna be virtual, so please tune in.
Yes, absolutely. So we can definitely do that. Well, thank you so much. Anything else you want to just anything else you just want to add before we
I think that's it. Like, this is one of my shirts as well. It's actually a sweater. But if you guys support again, go to the website, which I told you is kingdompriority.square.site, and you can purchase it on there and support.
Absolutely, and that we will do. Thank you so much for being on and being a part of this movement, this cause.
Thank you for having me.
It was really good seeing you.
You too.
All right, thank you again, and we'll see you again real soon, December 5th.
Yes, ma'am.
All right now.
All right.
All right, so listen, we are going to keep moving. I really enjoyed that poetic piece, didn't you? So we're going to keep going with the program, and we are going to start our first round of interviews. Our first interviewee that will be a part of the panel on today is Christine Paget, and she has been an assistant defender at the state appellate defender office since 2004. In 2014, she received the Norris J. Thomas Award for Appellate Advocacy, recognizing her for her amazing work in regarding the challenging convictions of James Grissom and Jimmy Nelson. And both men are on the National Registry of Exoneration. She went to college and law school at the University of Michigan and was on the editorial board of the Michigan Law Review during law school. She has volunteered for many years with the ACLU and has a particular passion for voting rights. And listen, I'm just going to stick a plug right there. If you've not done so already, make sure that you vote. All right. So she will be working at the polls on election day in her native place, which is Detroit, and she regularly staffs the voter protection hotline. So ask her voting questions and go blue. I'm gonna have to it's gonna be go white. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so let's welcome her on today, Christine Paget. Yes. Hello, my dear.
Hi, Dr. G. How are you?
I am awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on today. Your presence is especially needed, and as well as your voice. So I want to say thank you.
Oh, no, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it. Talking both about my day job of working on indigent defense appeals and my volunteer job of getting everybody to get out and vote.
All right, that sounds great. And we're going to bring two more of your panelists that are going to join you, and we're going to have an amazing discussion here around the table. So, Indy Amadi, who has a Juris Doctorate and is a professor of American government, social justice activist, and speaker. She's the founder of the Justice Warriors Academy, an organization designed to educate, enlighten, and power individuals on the social justice issues of our generation. From universities, nonprofits, and faith-based events to sororities, productions, and podcasts, she has traveled the country to empower audiences with passion, knowledge, and skills. So, from Ontario, California, she is first generation Nigerian American and enjoys bringing her culture into her work. She is a proud graduate of Howard University and Drake University Law School, where she earned a distinction in public service. She enjoys traveling, cooking, the arts, and spending time with family and friends. And please give a warm welcome to Ndidi Amadi.
Greetings, everyone.
Hello,
how's everyone doing? Hello, Dr. Bryant.
How are you, my dear?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm so blessed and excited to be here.
Yes, and we're glad to have you as well. And listen, we have one more who's going to join the conversation, if that's all right. We have Mr. Carl Williams. Community service for Carl Mack Williams took root in such organizations as the National Association for the Blind, the Underground Railroad, and the Saginaw, which is my native place, Saginaw Citywide Youth Initiative. This evolved into political leadership for 15 years, first on the Saginaw City Council and then in the Michigan State House of Representatives, where he was elected as the first African American state representative in Saginaw County's history. So, after being term limited out of the legislature, Carl accepted a 4-year appointment from the governor, Jennifer Granholm, to the Michigan State Department of Corrections, where he created the Department of Public Affairs for the newly established Michigan Prisoner Reentry Initiative, which strives to address prisoner recidivism. So please give a warm welcome to Mr. Carl Williams.
I think
I hear he may have.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think Carl Williams is not, he may have jumped off for a bit.
Okay. Well, listen.
We think it might be a connection problem. You know how technology is these
Yes,
days.
absolutely. So what we're going to do, we are going to go ahead and start the questioning, and I hopefully that he'll be able to reconnect. So we want to make sure that we get the questions addressed that everyone is waiting to hear. So listen, I want to shift gears a bit, and I want to deal with the criminal justice system. So, after years of systemic racism and laws of oppression, why does the criminal justice system need reforming now?
Absolutely. I think the criminal justice system needs reformation now, especially because it really harmfully affects Black and Brown individuals to the highest extent. I think that we are seeing day to day how the systemic racism and the different policies and different laws and how we're treated affects how our highest incarceration rates. In America, we have the highest incarceration rates in the world. So even starting for something as simple as the cash bail system, with a lot of politicians have been trying to fight, you have people who are being penalized for being poor because they're not able to afford bail, and they're sitting there stuck in jail and they haven't been able to try their case. So even simple things such as the cash bail system are really affecting Black and Brown communities. And that's one of the examples of how the criminal justice system needs to be reformed. And I'm sure Christine could talk a lot more about that.
Absolutely. Yes, please.
You know, it is such a big question. And in fact, actually, your question almost answered why it needs to be reformed. You know, we've got a system that's not making us safer, and it's working in ways that are fundamentally unfair. We have politicians who get elected and spend decades being rewarded for calling for law and order, writing laws with harsher and harsher punishments, and making more and more things crimes. Prosecutors charge people with multiple crimes for the same act. We like to call it the unholy trinity. You get felony firearm, felon in possession, and there's a third one that's escaping me that always carrying a concealed weapon. All three of those, one gun, right? And then people are sentenced more harshly because they've committed a lot of crimes, even though it's just one act, one gun.
Sure.
And then the other thing that you then see, and that recent studies have been showing, there was a recent study of the felony firearm law by Safe and Just Michigan that showed that statistically, Black and Brown people are getting convicted a lot more and getting the mandatory 2 years in prison for that.
Sure.
The ACLU has done studies that show that marijuana possession laws, the same sort of thing. Even though white people are smoking as much weed as the Black people, you only see the Black people really getting charged with that, and
the harsher punishments.
Harsher punishments are punished really even at all, and all of the consequences that roll from that. So when time after time and study after study show the reality of the situation, the need to be reformed seems really very obvious.
Absolutely.
Hi, Carl. Looks like his connection came back.
Mr. Williams, thank you
Yeah.
so much for joining us. As a matter of fact, if we could just get you to just take a deep dive into the question that we just asked, we were talking about the criminal justice system that we know needs reformation. So if you just want to speak to that briefly before we continue on, I want to make sure that you're part of the conversation. So if you would just touch on that a bit, we would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm sorry I lost you. It just went out.
Oh,
And I had to go all the way out and come back in. So what was the question again?
Oh, why does the criminal justice system need reforming now?
Simply put, just because it reinforces the systemic structure that we have existing now in law enforcement. And by that, what I mean by that is it's real crazy when you look at the percentage of population as it relates to the United States of America for people of color, particularly African Americans, and then you look at the prison population and juxtapose that, and it's crazy. I think it's something like 14% versus 55%.
Wow.
And you know, one of the things that we really have to look at doing is truly looking at how do we start to square that off? You know, how do we start to try and correct that? And you know, the obvious answer is, you know, the way you eat an elephant, one piece at a time, because you can't do it overnight. But it's certainly time that we had that conversation that people always say we need to have when a black man is killed, but we never really seem to get around to having that conversation,
Oh,
because as
absolutely.
soon as the media goes away, so does the whole issue. But we've got to start trying to look towards having that conversation. If we don't do anything, systemic means exactly what it says. If we don't do anything, it stays the same, and
Absolutely.
it's embedded. It's in the very structure of our system.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Williams, for that. Absolutely. Everything you said is definitely true, and you've echoed basically everything that the other two ladies had mentioned earlier. So we know that we are all on the same page here. And I just want to just quickly direct this question to Christine. So we're going to talk. We're going to be talking later about some people who have been wrongfully convicted of crimes because of the criminal justice system. They simply just didn't do their work in the cases in the first place. So do you have any advice for innocent people who find themselves charged with a crime, or, you know, God forbid, just them being convicted, period?
So my advice would be what I would follow, at least for myself, right? If I were to find myself in that position, and your chances, the further and the later you go in the system, the harder it is to get a conviction overturned. So your best shot is before you get convicted.
Sure.
And so it's really important to use your resources there to find yourself a lawyer that you trust and can work with, and get some recommendations for somebody who is both going to fight with you, right? So who's going to listen to you and that you can work with and is going to be effective for you. My advice too would be to be honest with that lawyer. So sometimes people, they're nervous, they're afraid, they want to make it a little easier, a little better, right? So maybe fudge a little bit with, fudge a little, make the story a little better, and then sort of hope that the facts don't really come out that way. And the problem is that if that fudging gets found out, it looks worse for you, right? Because,
Absolutely.
we can understand the instinct to do that, but you could also see how it makes you look worse. So, try and do that fighting up front. And then the advice sort of stays the same every step of the way you go, right? So later on, the Michigan Innocence Clinic is doing great work, but there's a lot of steps before you get there. So you want to use those resources and try and not get yourself into that place where you need their help, because they can only help so many people. I should maybe in this place also tell you to take a look at my office's website, sato.org. I think if you go to sato.com, you go to a totally different kind of website that maybe you want, but is not going to help your conviction. And we also have Facebook and Twitter pages. I don't know if Twitter is a page exactly, or more of a stream. And also we do outreach and work with returning citizens and families. And that's a good place to ask questions.
Okay, wonderful. If we have any questions, we'll make
Oh,
sure
yeah.
we have questions come in. We'll make sure that we'll come back and ask those questions directly to you. But I wanted to go back to, you talked about resources, and
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Williams and Diddy, please chime in. We're talking about resources, right? And so I thought about racial disparities and how there are inequitable access to resources and higher crime rates and overt racial bias in legislative decisions. So what do you believe is the root of the racial disparities in the criminal justice system in the United States?
Well,
One,
I believe the root is racism. I also believe the root is, unfortunately, sometimes we can be uneducated as to how we can fight the systems and structures that are meant to hold us down. There are resources for people to get ahead in life, but unfortunately, some people do not know of those resources. But there are a
Sure.
lot of great organizations that are doing great work. Say for someone who's wrongfully convicted, the Innocence Project, there's the ACLU, there's just so many different organizations, nonprofit organizations, faith-based organizations, whatever you can think of that are doing such great work, but a lot of times the community doesn't know about it. And I think
Sure.
that it's also important for us to, I know we've hammered how important it is to vote, but it really, really is important to vote, not only to vote, but to have an educated vote, because who we're voting for actually does affect the criminal justice issues that we are seeing. So an example I will give is, I'm sure a lot of people have been following the Breonna Taylor case, and they've been following the attorney general in that state, in Kentucky. What a lot of people don't know is that he is an elected official. And so the constituents in Kentucky did not realize that until after the fact. So it's like things like that can trickle down into our lives, but we really need to understand how all these things play into our life and that we really do have the power to see the change that we want to see.
Sure. Absolutely.
if I could chime in, I think
Please.
one of the roots of it is also just simply the lack of resources. What you see a lot of times is a person, because of a lack of resources, would see their attorney 2 minutes out in the hallway before they went inside of the courtroom to face the judge, because they didn't have money to hire a lawyer to have them buy a brand new blue suit with a red power tie and have time for that lawyer to investigate their case and put up some kind of defense where they could go to trial, as opposed to an indigent defense situation where when they go in there, it is not how long, if they're going to prison, it's for how long, because what they're faced with is not you're going to have a trial by jury, but you're going to plea bargain.
Absolutely.
And that sets up the dynamic of, it's not if you're going to prison, it's for how long. Some of the things that we do have on the positive side that I'd like to mention, though, is the Indigent Defense Commission has got a shot in the arm in the last year in the state of Michigan, and it is in a position where it doesn't have a lot, but it does have more funding to be able to offset that kind of thing, where a person may be able to get some good representation as opposed to the other way around. Also, the public defender's office, we just had one put here in the city that also helps with that kind of thing. But mostly it is strictly comes down to money. It's a lack of resources that helps to have that uneven percentage that I talked about in terms of population out here as opposed to population in prisons. When I was with the Prison Reentry Initiative, used to break my heart because I had all of the sites in Michigan, so I would be in and out of prisons a lot. It breaks your heart to walk across those yards, and all you see for the most part are black and brown faces in those orange suits, and you say to yourself, "I know our young men can't be that bad as opposed to others," but it starts a lot of times with a lack of resources that results in prison instead of community service.
Sure.
Can
Absolutely.
I think I'd like to maybe build on, I think something Ndidi touched on, which is, which has to do with voting and who you're voting for and who your decision makers are, right? So you have prosecutors and legislators and judges who, if it's all white men from an upper, middle class background, they're not a diverse group, and they're racially or economically, and they're not understanding the lived experiences of a lot of the people who don't have those resources, right? And I was listening actually just today to there's an essay in the New York Times Magazine, and it was about the experience of a returning citizen of color who's actually a lawyer now, but he was talking about Kamala Harris as part of it and her decision to run for office that was driven by listening to the conversations of the other prosecutors, thinking about how you could tell that somebody was in a gang by the neighborhood they're from and the type of clothes they're wearing and the type of music they're listening to. And if that she broke into the conversation and said, my family lives in that neighborhood, I'm listening to that kind of music. I don't think she was wearing the baggy pants they were talking about, but all of the rest of it. And that if you have people making decisions, charging decisions, legislative decisions, sentencing decisions, who just don't understand where people are coming from, and they don't know what it's like to struggle, and they don't know anyone whose life isn't like theirs, the laws are going to be made and enforced from just one perspective, theirs. And so that's both why you see the racism impacting the system, and also why it's important for people to get out and vote.
And it leads me right to this question. I mean, is it meaningful? Is meaningful reform even possible in the current political climate? And if so, what opportunities exist?
So I would say that yes, absolutely. You actually see some reform happening. I hear that Safe and Just Michigan, that is a coalition group, they say it's a great climate. They're working on expungement things, and they've raised the age for not for the less serious offenses. But it's just the tip of the iceberg. In Michigan, children as young as 14, if they're charged with the most serious crimes, are charged automatically and sentenced automatically as adults. So, that the law would still allow Nathaniel Abrams to be charged and sentenced as an adult for, when he's only 11 years old. You have these really long mandatory minimums. And if you are sort of, a lot of groups are looking at it from an economic impact on the people paying for the prisons, and maybe not so much on the other economic impact. But it's time to maybe do some really hard thinking about the value of locking up people and throwing away the key. And these are the things that, with sort of change and bringing in these more diverse backgrounds, that that you could make these meaningful changes.
Sure.
But if you're not getting out to vote, nobody's going to listen to you.
Yeah, it's critical in
It's
this
meaningful.
time to vote. Go ahead, Mr. Williams. I'm sorry.
It's meaningful if you put the right people in office. You cannot get around not putting the right people in office. When you look at the fact that you can't legislate morality, but boy, you sure can put some good policies in place if you have the right people in office to do that. That raise the age piece, that's a good piece, because there's some horrific experiences experienced by young men before that was raised, and we still have to keep trying to raise it. That the clean slate legislation that we had passed in Michigan, that's a good thing, because it does some positive work in terms of getting rid of some felonies and misdemeanors that get in the way of people who really want to try and straighten their lives out and live constructively. But what we've got to do, and I don't know how many people connect those dots, because I hear a lot of barbershop philosophers and people that give all kinds of reasons about why they don't vote and all that. But I gotta tell you, you have to put people at the table who are going to look out for your quality of life, because trust me, if they're not at the table when it comes to you, you're not even discussed. Not only is nothing done for you, you're not even discussed. You have to put people at the table who are going to try to improve your quality of life, and then hold them accountable. Don't put them there just because they dress sharp or they Nene's cousin. Put them there because they will look out for your welfare and make sure that they're accountable. But we've got to have people understand the importance of voting.
Mr. Williamson, you've raised an amazing point. Here's the issue. A lot of people have trust issues with the system now. And so here's my question to all of you, please, as we're getting ready to wrap up this session. So what impact will the upcoming presidential election outcome have on positive strides? We've been talking about the negative. What are some positive strides being made in our criminal justice system based on who we get in office?
I'll have to add, I'm from California, and we have on our ballot propositions, California is proposition heavy. And on our ballot, we have several different propositions that will address criminal justice reform. For example, we're going to be voting for allowing for felons to restore their right to vote once they are on parole. And I think that's an amazing thing. So it's not just politicians, it's also those referendums and measures and propositions, no matter what your state calls them, that can actually affect people's lives who have been in the system. So I think it's also important not just to pay attention to the high ticket, but to pay attention down the ballot and also those referendums and measures and propositions as well.
Absolutely.
So there's a proposition on Michigan's ballot as well that relates to searching phones and electronic privacy. But I would make the same point Ndidi makes, which is that you're not just talking about the top of the ticket, you got to look further down. So for instance, in Michigan, we elect our justices, and so the Michigan Supreme Court justices are on the ballot right now. The Chief Justice, Bridget McCormick, is up for re-election. She was one of the founding members of the Michigan Innocence Clinic. So she's bringing that perspective to the bench, and as somebody who practices regularly there, that her voice there makes a difference. With the retirement of Justice Markman, we have an older ex-prosecutor who is going to leave the bench, and there's the possibility if that the court could flip and have a majority of not law and order people for the first time in a long time. So those nonpartisan races are important, and the prosecutor races can impact the cash bail, those reforms that we talk about. If you have a reform-minded prosecutor that can make a difference right at the beginning and make a difference in the way they're viewing things. And these national politicians all started somewhere, right? So Kamala Harris didn't start by being a senator. She started by running for county prosecutor.
Sure.
So,
I would like to dovetail on what Nidhi said.
Please.
about the down ballot. She's absolutely correct. And it even goes deeper than that, than we've talked about. For instance, city councils can have sway over ban the box, for instance. Okay, they can take care of that. Now that's on the city council level, where they can do something about a person filling out an application, and the moment that box asks you a certain question and they answer truthfully, they're thrown out, instead of letting an employer figure out for themselves after they talk to a person whether they want them or not, depending on what it was that they did. I mean, if a person did one thing over here and I've got a business that has nothing to do with that, that person may be a genius for me and I want to hire them. But if that box is there and they have to fill it out, then their application is automatically trash canned. Well, city councils can change that if they want to. So I'm in total agreement with down ballot, but I'm saying go all the way down, because all of it matters.
Yes, absolutely.
Who you put in a position.
Yes. It's been an absolute, it seemed like we were only on here for just about 10 minutes. All this knowledge and this wisdom and this back information has been just absolutely amazing. I know it's my favorite word, right? But we're getting ready to bring this interview to an end, and I want to personally thank you all. And in behalf on the organization, just thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. And just want to stick in a plug really quick to everyone who's listening. Please get out and vote.
Thank
Please
you.
get out and vote. Your
Yes.
voice matters, and that's where our panelists was driving home on today. Your voice matters, and your vote counts.
And even if you're not registered yet in Michigan, you can register on the day of the election. You just have to go, you got to go into your clerk's office or a satellite clerk's office, and you can register right then and there and vote.
That's good to know. That's good to know. Anybody else, really quick, because we're gonna have to
Just drop them in the drop box or go to the clerk's office. Do not mail them at this point.
Not at this point.
Too late.
Drop those ballots off.
That's right.
Thank you again for all of you joining us.
Thank you.
On this afternoon. It's been a complete, absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Bryant.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you later. Thank you. Bye now. Wow. The discussion was so rich. There was so much that I know that you were able to walk away with and to internalize. It's very important, number one, that we vote and we get the right people in office, or guess what? No justice, no peace. All right. So we have to make sure we get people in office. So listen, we're getting ready to shift just a bit. We have some more poetry coming up, and I am really excited about this group. This group is all the way from Detroit, Michigan, and I am going to really quick read their bio. Collective Variety is a group of poetic creatives birthed in the Metro Detroit area. And guess what? They're dedicated to high art, truth, and the spectrum of mental health. Something that we all need to make sure that we're taking care of our mental health. Listen, they were founded in 2017. They set out with a goal to discuss mental health, social justice, and many other topics through poetry. And so they're made up of a group of five. Dufuete, Cry Quick, Dewan Bland, Danny Unspoken, Corzetta Renee, and Brittany Caris. They all bring real life experiences to the forefront of their writing to agitate biases and bring healing through honesty. Let's give our Collective Variety group a hand as they come and rock the stage.
If this pandemic has brought out anybody's truth, I think it's brought out ours more than anybody's. Because Black people have always had to be more compliant. We've always had to cover up. We've always had to mask who we are. So we'll be accepted in corporate. So we'll be accepted in proper circles. So we code switch all the time. So sometimes we have to be proper and speak a certain way. Sometimes we have to express ourselves and hold back our feelings and our expression and our passion because it gets mistaken for something else. And so I think it's so hard for other people to be compliant because they've never had to be. Freedom is something that was given to others and something that we still are obviously fighting for. If you look at the climate of the world right now, like we're experiencing racial injustice that we've been experiencing for years upon years. And now the pandemic. And while it's affecting our people more, it's almost like we've become comfortable with adjusting to discomfort. So we try to give people these perceptions of who we are and make them believe that we're cool enough to be down with our friends. And at the same time, we're professional enough to be in boardrooms. And in all of that, we kind of get lost in who we are just because we're trying to fight to survive. So I could say that this is me, but then I would be fraudulently giving you something that I think you'll understand. Trying to be proper enough for the man, trying to be loyal enough to my friends, trying to be black enough to be worthy of this melanin, mask on. I'm good enough to be paid less than salary, mask off. I'm bad enough to be black and angry. Couple that with being a woman, convinced I gotta work for what I'm given. Like I'll ever be good enough to be equivalent. It's evident that Corona did not give me this mask. See, this cover up came from trying to thrive while black. So they take AR-15s to the Capitol, kill our kin, and get away with it because murdering us ain't worthy of being capital murder. And the only thing they ever have to cover is each other's crime. So they get rewarded with more time without bars because dying their roots is more essential than protecting us from dying because of our roots. And the only thing they've ever had to cover up was the truth. While our youth got to be told how to get pulled over if you black. Unfortunately, ain't no mask for that. Their hate is uncovered. So we got to be proud undercover, even though we've discovered that they hate us for our color. And they steal everything from us, from our people to our culture. So we forever trying to blend in for opportunities that will not be given, even if we have earned the mask on. Trying to convince ourselves that we're worthy of the boardroom, mask off. Teaching our babies that they have value, not despite their color, but because of it, mask on. Trying to conceal the pain behind knowing that the world will never agree with that statement. Mask off. I'm black and I'm proud. Mask on. Don't say it too loud. Mask on. You're the token. Mask off. I know they don't really want me. See, mask has been a perpetual state of being. And even if you so woke that you never sleep, you have to admit this always been our reality. Because be it mask on or mask off, they'll never take our greatness at face value. Because truth is, our face ain't nothing that they value except for entertainment. It's like the new slave trade. They watch our athletes exhaust their bodies because of the money they make. Give us checks to stay in check. Because if you're a black hooper, you should shut up and dribble. But if you're a white quarterback, you got a right to oppose a man that silently protests a system that sees him as a player, but not quite as a man. Whole time y'all yelling, "Make America great again," mask on. Because you like me better when I'm silent. Even though silence don't buy us no pardons from violence, mask off. We get accused of hanging ourselves from trees, mask off. We get killed in police custody, mask on. When they see us, they think criminal, mask off. When we see them, we see one. Mask on or mask off. We've been fighting to survive since before the pandemic.
No verdict, no value. No one to blame but the boy. They told me I was going to be trouble for the ladies. That this face will be remembered. That this smile, these eyes will leave hearts broken, and my charm can change the world. It was a hot day 65 years ago. I, a Chicago kid with a brand new 14-year-old body, a little too much testosterone in it and way too much black skin on it, in a place where the darkies beat their feet and the black boys hang from trees in the Mississippi dirt. I choose to try my luck with a pretty little dolly and flirt, and she was to die for, and I knew my whistle would be heard, but I never knew a whistle could hurt until 3 days later they beat my face, told me a nigga must learn his place, and to make sure that I died, put a bullet between my eyes, so now I can truly see my mistakes. Blame the boy.
You know, my mother told me that I play too much. She said I had jokes to die for. It was a fall day in the town of King James, and I guess I was just a boy with too much time on my hands and too much brown in my skin, waving a gun that passes by. The call said, "There's some black guy with a gun." Said it was probably fake, that I was probably juvenile, but none of that translated. The cops only heard
Black and gun.
And it only took them 2 seconds to decide whether I died or not. Not even enough time for me to process what sent my soul into eternity, but
Blame the boy.
With lungs too young to know true fatigue, a mother who must mourn a martyr, trying to convince this world her son was worth more than a hashtag.
Blame the boy who was told he lived in the land of the free, but paid the price for not knowing his place. Blame the boy.
For being body too big. You 12-year-old giant. There's no justice for the superhuman youth.
Blame the boy whose adolescence will never shake hands with adulthood, who never got a chance to learn from his mistakes. Blame the boy.
Or his father, the man who failed to shape complicity in his heart, didn't shadow fear in his ear, didn't tell him that off-color humor was reserved for those who lack melanin, that dark times await those with your skin tone.
Blame the boy or his mother who had to casket her son an open book so the world can read the story of racism, of hate, of America. Blame the boy.
Or his mother, again, to say that she Frankenstein the criminal, say that she's unfit, untaught. But how? How does a woman learn how to bury in 1 week who she carried for 9 months?
Blame the boy, not the men who kidnap their innocence, who sees no human in these beings, who sees no fear in their eyes, who sees no sons, who sees no brothers, just black. Blame the boy.
But who even taught you that being black and young was legal, that your freedom looked anything like beavers? Didn't you know since birth you've been tethered to this court now, whether with ball or bail is the only choice given?
Blame the boy, not the jury who failed to see the fact that these boys will never kiss their mothers, failed to see that these sons will never hug their dads, failed to fight indictments but succeeded in being a jury that's not so grand. Blame the boy.
For being more than allowed, say that he ran faster, that he jumped higher, say that he took 5 shots, speak of him anything, say that he was everything but son, but scared. Blame the boy.
Because he was strong like an ox, because he looked older than what he was, because he fought back, because he was not right or in the right neighborhood for standing his ground. Blame the boy.
Not the cops, not the judge, not the small militia of white men who ripped recognition from his face, not the crazed vigilante with a record more extensive than a boy, not the older white gentleman who couldn't handle rap music for 5 minutes at a gas station. There's no excuse. It's not like he shot up the school or the church or the concert or the movies, because then you can blame his brain. But since his crime was being colored,
blame the boy. Emmett,
Tamir,
Trayvon,
Mike, Monderick, Jordan, Sean, Oscar, Robert, Chris, Tay, Dewan, Dufate. There's no verdict.
No value. No one to blame but the boy.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Verity, for both of those beautiful selections. Unmasked and Averted. Blame the boy. That was powerful. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence on today. And again, thank you all of you who are joining. And again, this is our open mic Poetic Justice. Yes. Event. So we're so glad that you are here with us around the table. We are discussing some of the most important issues for today. We need to make sure that, again, we go out and vote, and that we know what's going on around us in the different issues and cases and situations that's happening with our world on today. And we need people who are going to go out and advocate, people that are going to use their voice, because guess what? No justice, no peace. All right. So now we're getting ready to start our second interview with Kevin Harrington, who is 37 years old. And he's a Detroit native who was wrongfully convicted in the murder in 2002, and he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. He spent 17 years, all right, 6 months and 2 days behind bars before his release on Tuesday, April 21st, 2020, from the Macomb Correctional Facility in Lenox, Michigan. And so the Wayne County's Prosecutor's Office Conviction Integrity Unit last year began conducting a 6-month investigation into the case, which resulted in new witnesses and evidence discovering and leading to the dismissal of the charges, right? And so in April 2020, the conviction was officially dismissed by Wayne County Circuit Court Judge Shannon Walker. Harrington was released from prison, April 21st, 2020. Since his release, he had started his own business, the Justice Group Consulting Firm, LLC. Determined with determination, I probably should say that, to lend his voice to speak for the numerous innocent men still behind bars fighting for freedom today. And he's such an inspiration and a gift for this time and cause. And I would like you to give a warm welcome to Mr. Kevin Harrington.
Hello, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for joining us here on today.
Yeah, this is a pleasure to be here. A great panelist. The poetry just been through the roof. It really touched me a certain type of way, being I was one of those individuals in that same type of fight they speaking of today. So I can't wait to get my dissertation and ask any questions that the public has for me.
Oh, absolutely. I'm really excited about interviewing you on today about this issue. As a matter of fact, I listened in on the last interview, that the last panel that you were a part of, and you had really given us some things to think about. And
Absolutely.
I appreciate you just being a part of the fight, because you could have gotten released and sat back and watched, but instead of
Well,
watching, you
that
got
that
it.
does that does no one any good. If it happened to me, it could happen to someone that look just like me, that's coming behind me, and we can't have a world such as that. It's should be time out for people to just be lazy and say, well, I got mine. It's just time for me to relax and go into the sunset. I'm not fine with that. I'm fighting every day for justice. We got to get this thing right.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what? We appreciate you, and we're grateful for you fighting on the front line for freedom. So thank you so
Absolutely,
much. So
absolutely.
listen, without further ado, because everyone wants to hear from you, and we want to hear your voice
Wow.
and what it is that you are willing to contribute to this conversation. And so we want to talk. We want to talk about Mr. Clark's case.
Okay.
What was the prosecution's theory in Mr. Clark's case? You would
Um, well, Mr. Clark is a client of mine. He's actually my second client that I have through my consulting firm. Alfonso Clark is his full name, actually. He's from out. I'm actually a native of the city of Inkster, Michigan. It's right
right.
outside of Detroit. So his case almost mirrors my case. It's so many different things that went on in his case that we cannot have. Um, those officers involved in his case were some of the same officers involved in my case. If you
Mm.
was working in a corporate form and an employee passed bad checks on that company, every check that they pass in that company will be scrutinized. How we're
True.
not doing this in law enforcement is beyond me. So I actually had a conversation with the chief of the police of Inkster 2 days ago, and he gave me his word. We're going to do better right now, not tomorrow. So we have thrust Mr. Clark's case at the forefront. Um, they have the Conviction Integrity Unit, Wayne County, that's also looking into his case right now. But that's okay. But he's still in prison. We need to get these things rectified immediately. Um, it's just ridiculous. When you read over the case, it's black and white that this is an innocent man incarcerated for something that he did not do.
Yes.
When you are thrust into the MDOC in prison for something you didn't do, it's kidnapping. Let's call it what it is. This wasn't
Mm.
an arrest. This wasn't justice at all. When I served 17 years, 6 months, 2 days, and 35 minutes, that was kidnapping. When the brother William said when he was working for the Department of Correction and would go to all the different facilities and see those black men and see a black man, I was a part of that number. Yeah, I was a part of that number when he would look and see all these black people, these brown people that's incarcerated. And the sad thing is, a lot of people there are there unjustly, and we need to
Yes.
rectify that immediately.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And and I want to make sure that we do Mr. Clark Alfonso. I want to make sure that we do him justice by discussing his case, because we do know he's innocent and
Absolutely,
that he deserves to be on this side of the table. Yes.
absolutely,
Yes. So what is
absolutely.
the substance? Yeah. So let's talk. What is the substance of Mr. Clark's allegation in his application with Wayne County Conviction Integrity Unit. Let's talk about that.
I can kind of get into a roundabout, but not too much
Sure,
specific business. It's
sure.
an ongoing investigation. I don't want to do anything to screw up his opportunities of a
Yeah.
relief. So just a roundabout type of situation. Someone was shot and killed in a particular area in the city of Inkster. His name came up. You know how the officers do. It's almost like they pick a name out of a hat. Alfonso Clark was a college student, such as I was.
Yeah.
The evidence in the case was basically non-void. Um, they actually kind of threatened or coerced a person, like they did in my case, saying that they would take her child, the same thing they did in my case, if she didn't do X, Y, and Z. The same exact stuff with some of the same officers. Officer Del Greco, Officer Tony Abdella, Officer KP Smith. If any of these officers was involved in any case dealing in the city of Inkster, it should be reopened. I'm not getting it. I'm not understanding it because if it was a corporate business just dealing with commerce, they would open up anything that was done with an employee that was done wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, you really were just going down the street where I was going. So, what role did those policemen, the misconduct, how did it play a active role in your wrongful conviction?
Well, this is so mind blowing. I
Mm-hmm.
came home 6 months ago. The Conviction Integrity Unit, headed by Valerie Newman, under the tutelage of Ken Worthy, just found evidence still locked in the evidence locker of this year. These
Wow.
officers lied. I'm the only person in the state of Michigan went through 4 consecutive trials. Every trial, they said it was not there. We don't have it. This was evidence that could have been exonerated me. Ben got the case dismissed 17 years ago, and they lied all this time. So I don't understand any case these officers was involved in. Why is it not being reopened immediately?
And who's holding them accountable? Who's holding?
It's, at this point, Wayne County is doing some restructuring and they're trying to get together. But back then, it was no gatekeeping. It was the good old boys club. To the point I would go to court and the officers in charge would get on the stand. They would just snickle and snort at me. Hi, Kevin, how's it going? As if like this was just a game to them. And I would tell my defense attorney, like, why is he talking to me in this manner? He said, don't worry about it. There's really no gatekeeping. There's no one you can do. They'll just retire, keep their pension, things of that nature. It's a sad situation. It really is.
Mm-hmm. And what's really sad in Alfonso, Mr. Clark's case, is that there were some detectives that threatened to lock up witnesses if they told the truth about
Absolutely.
what was really, happening in this case. And so, and this is a pattern of behavior. We're seeing more of this. We saw
Absolutely.
this in your case, right? And
Absolutely.
we've seen this in other cases, right? So, do
Yep.
you believe that every case that detective was a part of during his career could be reviewed for police misconduct?
It must. If we're
Mm-hmm.
gonna run this campaign on transparency, it must be reopened. Because guess what? If it's just one more person that he done this to, that's one too many. When you take an oath and you're taking the taxpayers' money, you took an oath to protect and serve this community, not kidnap the people in the community.
Wow. 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 That's and it's really interesting that you say the word kidnap because
That's
people,
essentially what it is. If
yeah,
I take you somewhere you don't want to go against your will, that's called kidnapping.
it is.
If you take someone and arrest him for something he did not do, and he has to serve time away from his family loved one, that's kidnapping.
Especially if he doesn't know what he did wrong. It's like, I didn't, I'm innocent and you're pulling me in because, like you had mentioned, so basically you just found my name somewhere lying around and you need someone to take the fall. You needed someone, to cover the
And it's a
basis.
it's a pattern, and I can
Yes.
understand clinical error when it's a date messed up on a particular paperwork when that shouldn't even happen. But a
Mm-hmm.
clinical error is something that can be fixed. This stuff is done with thought and process. When you
Oh,
lie
yeah.
about something happening, when you
Strategic.
threaten it, when you have a pattern. Every time you get a witness, if they don't do this, you're gonna say you're gonna lock them up. You can't. That's against your constitutional rights by the United
It
States
is.
of America. This is
It
not
is.
Russia. This is not a third world country. You cannot do that here in America. And we must start holding these officers accountable. We must start having a gatekeeper in place So this can't happen to anyone.
And so when we say gatekeepers, when you talk about the gatekeepers, I want you to describe that just a little bit more to our audience. When you talk about those gatekeepers, what do they look like? Those gatekeepers.
The gatekeepers are their superiors. The gatekeepers are the people that train these officers. The ironic thing is, you have to take more hours of training in barber school than you do to be an officer.
Wow.
So you mean to tell me the person that's cutting my hair has more training than the officer just policing the community? That's a problem.
Yes, absolutely. Wow. So I want to shift just a little bit because I want to make sure that everyone understands why we're here. All right. So in the investigative report by investigator Vicky Yost.
She's a private investigator. Yes.
Yes, and she notes that Mr. Clark's case, the firearm was never recovered. There wasn't any blood found on the shoes, socks, t-shirt, sweatshirt, belt, or jeans worn by him at the time of the alleged crime. Right?
No physical evidence.
Right, and there's no physical evidence that's tied to Mr. Clark to the homicide. So what are the other contributing factors made possible for him to be convicted of?
Well, being a laying person, you would think it would have to be, but being the system that we was set, especially back then, just being a person of a particular melanin in your skin, sitting at the defense counsel table, going through a trial or being accused of something was just enough. That's all they needed.
And yeah, because there's no evidence tied to him to the homicide.
Absolutely. Just like it was no evidence. The witness even came and we had the interrogation whole tape where the police is threatening to curse her or what to say. And I still was convicted. Same with Fonzo Clark. It don't take much.
And it's really unfortunate because there's a lot of families that lose loved ones to this type of ignorance.
You destroy a whole family. You destroy a generation because these young, strong young males, females are stressed away from their family. First of all, you can't reproduce. You can't be there for your loved ones as they age into their old health. You don't have a thriving career because you're in the MDOC, striving to get home.
Sure.
The type of mental stress is on your family because they know you should not be there. You should be home with them thriving. It's just so many ripples effect when this stuff goes on unchecked. But the work that is being done by the Conviction Integrity Unit headed by Valerie Newman, I believe change is here now, being that they signed off on maybe 22 different cases within 2 years. That's unheard of around the country. And they're looking at Alfonso Clark case right now actively. And like I said, I talked to the police chief myself 2 days ago, and he said uncanny that anybody in his department a part of this, they got to go immediately.
Absolutely.
And these guys are not working in the department anymore, by the way.
You wonderful. And, just like with Mr. Hines' case, we all know that he is innocent as well, and that he has served from the time of being a minor, 17 years. And he's been wrongfully convicted of a crime that he did not do. And he's still serving in prison. He's a juvenile lifer, and he's been accused of first-degree murder. And so what can you tell us about what's happening, what's happened, the similarities of what's happening with your case and his case? Yeah.
Mr. Hine case, I kind of know a little about. He's not a client of mine, so I didn't really go in depth. But just on the overview of the stuff that I do know, he's wrongly convicted as well. The evidence against him was non-void. The things that kind of like happened in my case, Fonzo Clark's case, and so many other guys, it's a pattern. You look for the pattern. It's not a coincidence.
Yeah, because he was 17 when he was wrongfully convicted.
And I know Michigan changed the juvenile life law. So the first thing I would ask, why he didn't fall up under that? So there's a lot of different things that I don't know, because I'm not really aware of the ins and outs of what's going on with Mr. Hines' case. But the overview, being I've been on several different panels, and I heard different lawyers and different investigators talk about Mr. Hines' case, to know that he's a person of actual innocence as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just if I could just read some quick facts. Wayne County's prosecutor office refused to release their file after several FOIA requests were filed. The files were finally released after almost 4 years of repeated requests.
Wow.
And so these documents were discovered in a miscellaneous file in the possession of the Detroit Police Department. And based upon several news articles, the evidence had been hidden in a miscellaneous file. And that's what's so messed up about this case. And it's in the possession of the Detroit Police Department. And it's been issues ever since. And
see,
so
whistles and red flags goes off anytime you said they're not turning over a file, they withholding a file, all this stuff is public record. There should be no inmate or no person accused of a crime that said, hey, can I see the file that you guys have on me? Let me just go through it. The public can get these stuff. Freedom of Information Act, that's something the public can do. Anyone can do it. You can read any case that you want. If they saying they don't have it or you can't get it, it's a problem. Why?
Yes.
Because they must have did something very wrong that they don't want to get out by the public.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it was untested DNA evidence with him that in a file that lied. Basically, they lied about the DNA. Ironically, Paula Little, she resigned as the director of the Detroit Crime Lab while it was under scrutiny and before it was shut down. And so it caused a legitimate concern when it comes down to the missing DNA results of the hair with the root and attached referenced in Robert's miscellaneous case. So, and Robert had an alibi during the time the crime happened. He was at his aunt's house over 6 miles away from the crime scene. He was nowhere near the crime scene. And so the prosecution's witness, Timothy Shaw, never mentioned Robert in his initial statements to the police until he interacted with the Detroit police. The same thing that happened with Mr. Clark. And so the witness was at home when the crime happened.
Wow.
Right. So
it's sad.
Things were,
very sad. And the thing is, when you have all these red flags going off, these type of cases supposed to go to the top of the list. I understand it's a hard job, but this is what these guys signed up for, to do the hard work. There's no way we can have a criminal justice system where the community believes in when you keeping our people locked up for something they didn't do.
Well,
we can't have a system like this.
Yeah, and the prosecutor should have known. They should have known about the evidence. And so because of that,
or the lack thereof.
Yeah, and the lack thereof, Mr. Hines is he's considered a juvenile lifer based on the Supreme Court's ruling that it is unconstitutional, as you mentioned earlier before, but juveniles sentenced to life to serve a mandatory sentence. Even Mr. Hines were resentenced. He would still be required to serve a 25 years sentence before being eligible for release. And
that's sickening. That's sickening. 25 years is essentially taking someone's whole life. A person at the age of 20 years old does not have the same type of thinking when they turn 45 years old.
Right.
So, especially if you're wrongly convicted of a crime, and even if you're released 25 years later, you done took a whole lifespan. There's no monetary amount. There's no monetary amount you can compensate a person with that they can be happy with. They lost a whole lifetime already.
He doesn't have a desire to be resentenced under the Supreme Court ruling. And here's also what we know. There's also no expedited review of Mr. Hines' pending application available due to the emergency state caused by the COVID-19. So at a minimum, the discovery of the evidence should afford Mr. Hines a new trial. That's where we're at.
Absolutely. And also for the viewers, for loved ones, that are tuning in that may have a loved one in there that's wrongly convicted or trumped up charges. That's against your constitutional right as well.
It
I
is.
encourage them to align yourself with the private investigator, consulting firm, the University of Michigan Innocent Clinic, who worked diligently on my case, that was instrumental of me allowing being here with you guys on this panel. Like, I only been here 6 months, and every day I get up, I'm trying to help someone else come out of that situation. And that's my life work right now. That's what it is.
And we appreciate you again being on the front line and just being a voice and an advocate for those who are unable to be heard. You'll enter rooms
Absolutely.
that they right now they can't enter into right now. So, you know, Mr. Harrington, I know we went over a little bit, but I wanted to make sure that we highlighted, you know, why we're here. Why we're here
Absolutely.
for people like Mr. Clark and Mr. Robert Hines, Mr. Alfonso Clark, I'll say his name, and Mr. Hines, because it's time for them to go home. It's time for them to be free.
And reunited with their family and loved ones. That's they should.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We need to make sure that we help them to be set free so that they can go home to their families.
Yeah, and when you guys talked about voting, this is very important because you have people in place that the taxpayers pays their salary. Reach out to them. They'll get tired of asking, hey, what's going on with Mr. Hines' case? What's going on with Mr. Clark's case? Look into this. This is in black and white. This is not something that I'm making up. These officers are corrupt. They have found to be corrupt in other cases. Why is this case not the top of the list? And why are these individuals still being held in captivity?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I wish we could keep going, but thank you. Thank
Absolutely.
you
Thanks
so
for having
much.
me. God bless you guys.
Yes, God bless you too. Thank you for having this conversation with us, and we appreciate
No problem. Anytime, any agenda. If you guys need me, I'm not hard to find. Give me a call, and I'm there.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye now. Yes. All right. Listen, I apologize. We went over just a little bit, but I wanted to make sure that we highlighted some of the most important information regarding Mr. Hines and Mr. Clark's case. And this is why we're here. We're dealing with the mass incarceration of our Black men in the U.S. So we're going to our interview 3, our last interview for this evening. So thank you for hanging out with us. And we really appreciate your presence during this event and this time. We're bringing awareness to mass incarceration of Black men in the U.S. And listen, this could be your brother, this could be your uncle, your husband, or whoever it might be. We need your voice. We need your vote so that we can set them free. So I want to go ahead and introduce our group. I'm sorry. Our group is going to bring a last selection, Verity, and I want to make sure that we have them come on and bless us with their other 2 selections. Verity. Oh, I apologize. Interview 3. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. So interview 3. So listen, we have our next guest, Olivia Pribich, and she is a 3rd-year student at the University of Michigan Law School and a 2nd-year student attorney in the Michigan Innocence Clinic. Before coming to Michigan for law school, she graduated from Tufts University, where she majored in political science and spent her spare time campaigning for Democrats across Massachusetts and working on various policy issues, including sexual assault prevention and funding for children's health programs. After graduating from Michigan in May 2021, she plans on joining a law firm in Washington, D.C. So Olivia says that doing innocence work has been eye-opening, incredibly impactful for her, and she is very much looking forward to discussing it in the context of prison reform in the upcoming election. Let's give our next interviewee A warm welcome, Olivia Pribich. Hi, hello there.
Hello, thank you so much for having us on.
Oh, thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. And I wanted to do we have Dima with us?
I think we do. I think she's here.
Okay,
Yes.
so Dima Atia, she is a third year law student at the University of Michigan. And she was first drawn to law because of the intersectionality between medical reform and policy brought by Obamacare in the law. So after interning in the White House for President Obama, she focused her education on giving access to health care to underrepresented populations. So recently, Dima found her passion in representing a wholly different group of disenfranchised, the wrongfully convicted. So through her work on the Hill, in the White House, and the Michigan Innocence Clinic, she plans to pursue a career that advocates for access to justice through political activism at the local level. That's the most effective. So if we can give a warm welcome to Dima Atia, I would greatly appreciate it. Hello, my dear.
Hi.
Hi there. So glad to have you. And I apologize for getting you guys on a little bit late. So thank you so much for your patience. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for being a part of this movement, this cause. And so I want to go ahead and just take a deep dive right into the questions that we want to make sure that we can hear from you on. So what are the prisons? Why are the prisons, filled with so many wrongfully convicted people? And what do we need to know about it?
Which half of that question do you want to take, Dima?
Well, I'll start with the beginning. I think that something that we've talked a lot about in the Innocence Clinic is that it's really hard for people to recognize that they're wrong. No one wants to think that they got it wrong. Judges want to think that they got it right. Juries want to think that they got it right. And police and prosecutors want to think that they got it right. And sometimes that turns into looking at statistics more, look at my conviction rate. I have a 95% conviction rate, and not actually paying as much attention to the fact that this is a person's life or the people that are behind the cases.
Sure. And so what is the Innocence Clinic doing to help the wrongfully convicted?
Yeah, I can take this one. So the Michigan Innocence Clinic investigates the case. I guess how the title makes clear, investigates the cases of people who have been convicted in the state of Michigan. And then once it accepts a client, the clinic will litigate their case all the way from trial courts in Michigan up the appellate system to the Supreme Court of Michigan. It will litigate in the federal system if that's necessary. And then we'll do other things like seek executive clemency from the governor, or work with conviction integrity units. You just heard Kevin give a really great description of what they do and how much they have helped out innocence work, including his own case. So, and then the actual content of that work can be really varied, but it can include, Kevin also talked a lot about FOIA. Documents are really important. Finding out what the state might have withheld at trial is really important. So we can request those documents and read them and, talk with the clients, talk with their families, witnesses, draft pleadings and things like that. So anything that needs to get done to get a person exonerated, basically.
Sure. Now, what are some of your personal efforts in the Innocent Clinic?
Well, Olivia and I review applications from people who apply to the clinic and, review their claims of innocence, and then also get to make recommendations as to whether or not we think that we should investigate their claims or not. After we decide whether or not to investigate a case, the students have a lot of a role in sort of calling around witnesses or going to crime scenes and calling people and trying to piece together what happened, because so many of these cases we're getting so many years later that we have to go back and figure out what the story was at the time.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's challenging, right? And so talk to us. how challenging is it for someone who is wrongfully convicted to be exonerated?
It's really, really challenging. I think there are a lot of reasons for that. Some of these cases are really old. The clinic has cases from the 80s, the 90s, I think a couple from the 70s. Even for newer cases, evidence can be really hard to find. Sometimes it's been intentionally destroyed by police departments. Witnesses die or they move away, or they become impossible to find again. There are procedural barriers in court. The criminal justice system has this idea of finality where we don't want to keep revisiting cases. And so we put up these sort of procedural walls to keep defendants from coming back to court, which is really harmful for innocent defendants for obvious reasons.
Absolutely.
And then so much of the misconduct that, you know, Kevin discussed is kind of like a two-headed monster, right? Like it convicts wrongfully an innocent person in the first place, but then when we try to exonerate them and we revisit the case, the exact sort of misconduct that led to the conviction in the first place prevents us from exonerating them in the second place. So if there are witnesses who say the police asked to lie to implicate this defendant, and threatened, this happens more frequently than you might think, threatened to take away their children if they wouldn't lie, then when we go back to that witness and ask them to admit they were lying, they're still scared of the exact same threat that was made years ago. So it not only leads to the wrongful conviction, but it prevents us from exonerating that individual. So it's a really, like, they're deeply embedded problems that are incredibly hard to solve.
Yeah, I mean, because
in my opinion, I think.
Oh, no,
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
That,
I was getting ready to ask you a question too, but yes, go ahead.
I think that the hardest thing is the procedural barriers, like Olivia mentioned, and just time in general. This is not a 1 year or a 2 year process. It's usually a decade long or more of a process. So I think that works against us sometimes. One of my first cases that I got to work on in the clinic, we are still working on getting him out, and he's been in for 38 years. He went in at 26. Now he's almost 64. That's really his entire life. And that means we're dealing with witnesses who aren't alive anymore. You know, all this evidence that was from so long ago that you have to sift through it and figure out what matters and what doesn't now. And, you know, he's very clearly innocent, but it's still been over a decade till we even made it to court.
You know, and what I just want to chime in really quick. There are so many families that are impacted, as I mentioned with Mr. Carrington. We had talked about that. So many families are broken up, and you know, they never get a chance to see those loved ones again. Like you had mentioned, sometimes they die in prison. So what type of advice can you give for supporters or families of those who have been wrongfully convicted?
Yeah, it's such an incredibly hard position to be in. I really can't imagine. And I think it also feels very powerless, right? You have this enormous system that has locked away your loved one who's innocent, and that's just something so enormously unjust to feel like you're staring in the face of. But what I can say is that a lot of our clients discuss the fact that the love and support from their friends and family is what gets them through their time in prison. It's what they hold on to. It's kind of the reason they have to go on. And so as much as it feels like you can't fix this system, you can't get your loved one out of prison, your love and support of them in and of itself is incredibly important and incredibly valuable. And it contributes more than I think you might feel like it does.
Sure. Dima, did you want to chime in really quick?
Yeah, I think it's really important to sort of educate people about why these sorts of convictions occur in the first place. You know, you have so many cases where it's the same storyline of either maybe a false confession or faulty eyewitness testimony, and juries don't hear enough information about how unreliable that sort of evidence can be. And maybe if more people were educated, then we wouldn't about the sort of evidence, then we wouldn't be in this position in some of these cases.
You know, what's really sad is that Michigan ranks 5th in the nation for wrongful convictions. So what are your thoughts about the state's high ranking, and what do you believe needs to be done to remedy it?
I think people need to vote all the way down the ballot, because those local prosecutors and those sheriffs are really important in cases like these. I'm here in Oakland County in Michigan, and the prosecutor who's running for election in 2 days promised to open a conviction integrity unit here in the county. And that needs to be something that's just uniform across the state and all sorts of different counties.
Sure.
So we need to be advocating for people like that and advocating for more progressive prosecutors, because at the end of the day, those are the people making the charging decisions. So we got to get them on our side a little bit more.
We do, in the right prosecution in place, so people can be released that have been in prison for something they didn't do. So yes, absolutely. Well, is there anything else that, as we wrap up this this interview, is there anything that you would like to end on that you want our audience to consider who's listening, about what we can do to help further this cause? Is there anything you would like to add or mention?
I think the voting note is the perfect one to end on. Michigan has same-day voter registration. It's not too late. You don't have to already be registered. And then, you know, even after Election Day, no matter how it goes, there's so much work left to be done. There's so much activism that can change things. And even if everyone you voted for is elected and you're thrilled, we can continue to hold those people accountable and ensure that they are fulfilling promises that will prevent wrongful conviction.
Yes, absolutely. Well, ladies, listen, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time and your patience and being part of this incredible event where we are trying to bring awareness to the mass incarceration of Black men in the United States. So thank you so much for joining us, and we really appreciate you being a part of the conversation on this.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
All right, listen, we are going to keep moving, and I just want to put a quick plug in again. Make sure you go out and vote. And if you're listening, if you're in Michigan, it's not too late. It's not too late to go out and vote. Go ahead and do it. Voting takes place. The election takes place on Tuesday, so there is still time. Do it. We need your voice. We need your vote. All right. So without further ado, we are going to keep moving, and we are going to have Verity give us another 2 poetic selection. They are so amazing. So stay tuned because we're getting ready to wrap up. So don't leave us just yet. All right. And here's Verity, another 2-part selection.
So I wrote this poem on a car ride home. Moses had a chance to partner with their sister organization out of Saginaw called Ezekiel to do an action around the time where our government was putting children in cages. And so I don't know if anybody else still does this, but remember when you were kids and you would look up in the clouds and like use your imagination to make them into shapes and stuff? So I think it may have been because how we spent the day, but I looked up in the clouds and I saw a very particular image. And as I was riding home, I just had a chance to pull out my phone, start typing, and I came up with this poem. So a chance upward glance on a car ride, and I see a child enclosed in a casket, interred. Resting with its arms across its chest, a cloud pillow, the only support this child had known. Dissolving support, even in death. We're campaigning to free innocent immigrant children from cages, and even as I type this, my phone can't fathom the concept. It autocorrects cages to cafes, suggests we feed these children over capturing them, arresting their growth, bounding potential, detaining their memories. Imagine growing up trying to explain away bondage in a land whose language is foreign. Imagine trying to heal scars branded into a memory you haven't even developed the psychology, the phonetic ability, not even within your worldview, to explain away what's happening to you. Imagine the only safety you've known ripped away for no justifiable reason.
Parents separated from offspring, no late night peeks to check and see if they're breathing. Imagine being detained a mere 3 feet away from a land that promised liberty. Ironic that we've caged youth on a soil that was won for freedom. The hypocrisy is not lost on me, but there's gotta be more. We can't just pour out thoughts and prayers. We can't just rest on our eloquent speech. We march and fight and cry and pray, take to Twitter with our thoughts, sit behind screens safe. But what of the child? Who will do more than speak? In a moment of travel, I looked to the clouds and I saw a child sleeping, resting, waiting for liberty and justice for all. But I wonder who else saw the child.
Hello, I'm Brittany Sharice, and this poem that I'm about to do is called Love Anyway. We are in a very difficult time. However, it's not a new time because we have encountered wrongful incarceration, police brutality, all of the above for thousands of years. So this poem is not one of my favorites, and I say that because it's very hard to separate advocate from the truth sometimes. Sometimes I get so much in my feelings that it's difficult to do this poem because I want to be angry. However, this poem came to me when I was in a group of friends and we were talking about, I think, a recent shooting that had happened. And it just occurred to me that even in the midst of all of the anger, we still have a responsibility to love. Love wins, love conquers, and we just have to be the light in the middle of dark situations. I recently consumed the hardest pill I've ever had to swallow, and it didn't go down smoothly. It was more like the bitterness you taste from uncoated aspirin, not as sweet as the sugar-coated pill that makes disease taste just as sweet. No, this medication corrected wrong educations, realigned my loyalties. I heard him say you're royalty, not just because of your ancestors' bloodline, but because of my blood that transcends time. Many of us think that we're woke, but we're really blind to what justice really means. Christ is saying, I'm on your side, but my reply was, Lord, why? Why don't they love us? Don't get it twisted. I don't speak from ignorance. My criminal justice degree taught me that the root of policing organizations in urban destinations was to keep a certain population under oppression. So no, it's not just a new obsession, because it seems that no matter how much we speak properly, wear our battered hearts on our sleeves, flash our degrees, that does not make us exempt from the repetition of history. It does not give us hope for the dawning of a new day. And Christ interrupted me to say love anyway. I said, but Sandra, he said love anyway. I said, but Milton, did you see the way he said love anyway? I said, but Tamir, he was just a kid. He said, that doesn't take away from what I did. The stripes that are on my skin are similar to the wounds you feel within. When someone hurt your brother or sister, you have to let me in. You have to let me win. But when will we win? He said, I was wounded for your transgressions, violations of laws, bruised for your iniquities. Those injustices I saw chastised for the peace that I sought to bring. Yet you still find it hard to believe that I am he who heard Abel's blood crying from the ground. You have to believe that I hear the sound. I hear the sound of your nations and your communities. And I'm saying, unite with me. My love is key. My love that has drawn thee is everlasting. My love executes justice and righteousness, that is not just for us, but just enough for everyone. My love wins every battle, tuning into every channel, watching things your eyes cannot even fathom to conceive. My love conquered the heart of Saul, who had purpose in his heart to kill them all. My love has conquered even the stoniest of hearts in you. And if that is not enough to prove, please refer to the biggest injustice of all time, mine, Son Jesus Christ.
Wow. That was Verity. Powerful, 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 powerful. You know, I just want to, again, just on behalf of the Life for a Life Urban Initiative, we want to thank you so much for being a part of this virtual event on this evening. And we're not done yet. I just wanted to just be grateful and appreciative of your presence, because it matters. You being here right now, that's your voice being heard. So thank you so much again for tuning in with us. And I want to talk about, how can you support? How can you get involved? So check out my shirt. I know it's no justice, no peace. And so what we're doing here, how we're supporting the wrongfully convicted, um, t-shirts, masks, different paraphernalia that's being sold at the store. In the store, we are sending those proceeds over to support our wrongfully convicted. So we have signed the petition. One click. All you have to do is sign the petition. So for Robert Hines, I wanted to just bring this up really quickly. He needs 1,000 votes, 1,000 signatures, excuse me, 1,000 electronic signatures. We're now at a 764. We need you after this show to go in and click that button and get that brother up to 1,000, so we can make sure that the prosecution hears us, because we know that he is innocent. So we have to make sure that we fight for him while he is behind bars. So listen, he has a hearing on tomorrow where he's supposed to, he's resentenced, and he's been waiting for 4 years for this. And so we need them to know that we need them to let Robert Hines go. So go in, click that button, sign the petition. All right. And then you can join the advocacy team. And there is a website below that you can go to where you can join and be a part of the movement, be a voice. And then the financial support, as I mentioned to you, with the GoFundMe, org, Free Robert Hines, or Cash App, RT Second Chance. So that's another way that you can fight for the cause. And now to the t-shirts. I think I got a little ahead of myself. So those are some of the ways that you can support the t-shirt. A mother's love. So there's a lot of mothers whose sons are still incarcerated, have been, as you've heard the stories. Kevin Harrington, is blessed that he was able to get out and tell his story, but there are so many others that are in there that has been juvenile lifers, and it's time for them to come home. It's probably your brother, your uncle, your nephew, whoever it might be, but purchasing a t-shirt, all the proceeds go in support of the wrongfully convicted. So we need you to patronize the Urban Life for a Life initiative by purchase one of these shirts. So one of the shirts, so get one of those. And I believe there's a website, it's down below, where you're able to purchase those items. And then also the face masks. We all could use those right now during this COVID-19 era. We need masks. So there's another way that you can support. So you can bring awareness to people that see you wearing those face masks. And then there's the cup. So there's so many different things that you can purchase, and it goes all in support for the wrongfully convicted. So we need your support. And in addition to that, I just want to place a plug. Make sure you go out and vote. And so below it says, check out the grand debut of our new t-shirt line for justice advocates. And so right below there's the website where you can go in, and again, all the proceeds help support our fight for the wrongfully convicted. So I want to make sure that I reiterated that. And so before we close out, I believe we have one more selection from our amazing, wonderful group. Have you enjoyed them on tonight? Oh my gosh. It's been beautiful. Beautiful, just absolutely beautiful. So we are going to bring back the Poetic group, Variety. We want them to come back, and they have another selection before we have closing remarks. Thank you so much.
So child support, we got this idea on the rooftop in DC. We just thought that one of the responsibilities America has is to support the children of America. And we see with a lot of practices and policies that they fail to do that. And so it is a subversion of what folks would hear or think about when they hear the term child support. We're putting the onus on the country.
Dr. Seuss once said,
adults are just outdated children.
I feel like we should invest in future generations. And this nation has been fruitless in its harvest, to say the least.
I say that we have reparations for the children.
Repairing the plunder done to Black and brown babies.
Living in a nation where being Black and brown, you weren't really allowed to be children.
Just fully adult the moment they leave nursery.
I mean, they know trauma before they have a full awareness of their age.
I'm proof. All of that pain is the reason I can poet on this stage.
Well, look at our immigrant families.
Government didn't treat not one mankind.
That was a huge undertaking.
They gave all of the adults hell in the cell.
Looked at the kids and thought,
let's throw them in the cage. They ain't never show that child support.
Look, I'm from Michigan. But they wouldn't even raise the education budget to give us more number 2 pencils. But lead levels skyrocketed. Closed down most of our high school. Rival gangs was forced to share hallways and send shots. The only hope they ever got was for the optimists. And then the kids up in Flint, they couldn't clean, drink, or bathe in the water. But y'all said so much had changed since them days we used to wade in the water. I mean, they poisoned a whole city full of kids just for some pennies. They get saved with the water and then told us aggression is the reason Black youth is dying. And we replied, no, wait, it's the water. I want Rick Snyder and Donald Trump to take all them kids to lunch, look their parents in the eyes and say, we ain't giving no child support.
I mean, just look at this nation. We have entire generations labeled thugs and gangsters just because they want to save Black and brown babies. But our president and these politicians school in division, splitting families at the borders, subtracting parents from sons and daughters, multiplying trauma, but just look at the math that they offer. Let's add work requirements to your benefits if you want to feed your kids. There's no money in state coffers, so food comes from local community gardens, and we don't have fun for the arts, but somehow we can build county prisons. So I want Gretchen Whitmer and the rest of these senators to paint a different picture. Instead of leaving us with the impression that we ain't giving no child support.
I mean, how we just throw away a couple generations?
I mean, a nation that's trash can't have some garbage values.
And every kid we leave in the dump stirs a fire in me.
We're trying to give them dreams that they can't write at Disney just to show that child support.
To every Black kid, whenever you see this,
I pray that you have more days of Marseille.
We done had enough Trayvons.
You know, we might have some teenagers out there. The next Spike Lee with a camera in hand chasing a dream.
No funerals, they in school shooting content for TV.
I just pray that we have more imagination.
Be extra.
Extra, make the headlines.
You're a star.
Witness to them.
Elevated in each case.
Never needed a jury of your peers.
They're not worthy enough to prosecute you.
You know, I pray that they will never have to be the first anything.
Because you were represented everywhere.
Pray that you never grow up in a nation wondering if they care.
They just always show the child support.
You know a boy named Matt. I know a boy named Matt. I know a boy named Matt. You know a boy named Matt. You know a boy named Matt. I know a boy named Matt. Okay. I have a question for you. Who's the bad guy in this story? You know a boy named Matt. Matt always wear a hoodie or his cap back. Detroit fitted or a snapback. True religion jeans, nice shirt, Louis Vuitton backpack. His mother wonders how he got that because she works 2 jobs. Most of the money goes to DTE. The rest goes to Comcast to pay for his BET. Section 8 pays for rent. Food is paid for by EBT. So she wonders how he got there. See, Matt doesn't care that the signs are posted. Drug-free zone, he said he runs his school. He's boasting he has a half sack of that rock crack in a knapsack right under his backpack, and his backpack doubles as a gun holster. So he ain't talking about shoulders when he say that's where his strap's at. I know you're wondering what his boy's pops at least where's his role model. He was raised by the streets. They told him to get girls, get money, pop bottles. His mother is only 15 years his senior, Matt. And a senior, that means she wasn't even a senior when he had him. His father was a senior who graduated out of his life when he found out he was having a junior. So before his mother was a sophomore, she brought a fresh man into this world, no principals, no class, no teachers. James Brown said it best, this here is a man's world. So I can't blame the girl. She did the best she could and even introduced him to a preacher. Problem was the preacher had the same values the world did. He said money and fame is his top priority. Being a broke Christian is just not in the majority. So Matt equated money with God, and money became his God. That means getting money becomes his true religion. And that takes us back to that true religions, that half sack of that rock crack in the knapsack. See, that is what he believes in. He sells his beliefs, so that makes him truly religious. But Matt got a little too big for his britches. Money bring haters. Haters turn to snitches when cops come around. It becomes no mystery. Matt, a senior in high school, get a full ride scholarship to Jackson State Penitentiary. In the courtroom screaming, somebody had to be the bad guy. He got that from a movie. Judge said, good. Bad guys go to real jail. You too old for juvie. So I asked you, who was the bad guy in this story? Is it Matt, the boy who was obviously raised bad? Is it his father who never wanted to graduate and to become a dad? Is it the pastor that made money his religion? Or is it all of us? Are we all the true villains? Because I said, you know a boy named Matt, and none of us made a difference. See, the bad guy in this Good Samaritan story was the ones that paid no attention. The bad guys were the ones that kept walking because they were truly indifferent. So I asked you, who was the bad guy in this story? Because as Christians, as a community, as a church, when we don't get involved, the bad guys look a lot like us all. So I ask you one more question. Do you love God? Then feed his sheep.
Awesome. Awesome, 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 awesome. Did you not enjoy Verity? Did you not enjoy Verity? Did you not enjoy all of our panelists and everyone that was able to come out today and join the Life for Life Urban Initiative? Listen, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for everyone that was a part of this event. Thank you for all of those that tuned in. Thank you for allowing me to be your hostess. I really appreciate it, and I'm passionate about wrongs being made right. All right. And so I want to leave you on this note, because you can make a difference. You can make a difference by getting involved. You can make a difference with your prayers. And lastly, you can make a difference with your vote. We need you. And so do all the others who are unable to speak for themselves. So again, thank you for being a part of this virtual event, and God bless. We'll see you next time.